Okay, folks, we can finally get started. Got our projector finally working. Hello, thank you all so much for coming once again. We appreciate you braving the cold to come out and hear from your Democratic candidates. My name is Kate Rivette. I'm the organizer of Firelands Indivisible, and I, along with Ruth Ann Parker, who is with the Great Lakes Good Trouble Group. She's the organizer behind this town hall, so we really truly appreciate you all coming. And we want to go ahead once again, as we had to do last time, 2 weeks ago. I'd like to have a moment of silence for the latest person who was murdered in the streets just a few hours ago by ICE. So if you could just bear with me for a moment. Thank you. So today we're going to hear from several different candidates that will be on your primary ballot. The primary is May 5th. Please mark your calendars. Make sure that you either vote early, which starts April 7th. So make sure you vote early if you need to, or get to that primary on May 5th. So first of all, coming up is Bryan Hambley. He is our candidate for Secretary of State, and we would love to have Mr. Hambley come on up and tell us more about himself. Forgot to give you all a little spiel. Obviously you have question cards on your chairs, so if you have questions for any of our candidates, please write them down and pass them to the ends of the rows, and we have volunteers. Just people at the end of the rows hold them up, and our volunteers will come and grab them and have them come up. All right.
This one?
Yes, sir, right over there.
Is that working all right? Well, thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. When Mark and I are in Toledo last night, and when we left Cincinnati yesterday, it was about 25 degrees. When we got to Lima, it was about 15. When we got to Toledo, it was about 5. Our first house party in Toledo, it was 2. And then I think when we woke up this morning in Toledo, it was -9. And at that point, I told Mark, I don't know, is it actually going to happen in Norwalk? Would you reach out to the organizers? And here we are. So I'm glad everybody is here. Thank you for being here. Yeah. Give a round of applause to everybody for showing up. I understand we are having this conversation at an unusual time in American history. And so the way I'd like to start is by everybody just taking a moment to themselves and thinking of something that you're proud of that America has done or built. We'll take about 30 seconds. Think of something you're proud of in American history that we have done or built. Some people say Yosemite, the Affordable Care Act, Medicare. You can take it in whatever direction you want. Thank you. Could a couple people share? I heard one in the back I love.
Yeah, the Constitution and Declaration.
Yeah, a Democratic Republic, 250 years old this summer. The oldest existing democracy on the planet. That's a pretty good one to start with. Yeah.
Civil rights.
Civil rights. Yeah.
Bill of Rights.
The Bill of Rights. Yeah. Great.
Women's rights.
Women's rights. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Equality.
Equality.
Right to marry.
Say it one more time.
The right to marry.
The right to marry. And many of you know that last summer was the 10-year anniversary of the Obergefell decision, which made it legal in the law of the land for people to marry who they want. And if Obergefell lived in Sandusky, not 25 minutes from here, Ohio had a big role to play in that huge leap for our country. Thank you for mentioning that. Yeah.
Defeating the Axis in World War II.
Defeating the Axis in World War II. That's a pretty good one. Anyone else? Something they're proud? Yes, sir. Robert, did I catch that?
This country's never lost a war.
Never lost a war. Yeah. Yeah. Public education, which also has some roots in Ohio. When we were the old Northwest Territory and they were sectioned off into boxes and grids, they had a public school in each one. That started in Ohio, as you might know. Anybody? Yeah.
Welfare.
Welfare. Great. Thanks, Logan.
Social Security.
The Social Security. Yeah. Anybody know somebody on Social Security? That's the point. And if the Republicans are going to openly campaign against Social Security, that is a political opportunity for all of us. Anybody see the interview where Ramaswamy said that Medicare was a mistake? That was this week. We cannot underestimate how far off the rails Ramaswamy will go. We need to make sure he pays a political price. Thank you for that.
And any public assistance too.
In any public, yeah, a whole host of programs.
Plane from Columbus to Cleveland to go to the Gatsby ones.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Freedom of the press.
Yeah, which has become essential this last year. And, you know, I'll say I'm running for Secretary of State. It was only a little ways from here where a couple months after our Secretary of State torpedoed an independent redistricting commission with dishonest ballot language, the chair of the Republican Party of Ohio, in a room he didn't know had a journalist in it, said that confusing Ohio voters was a pretty good strategy. And the next day, because we had a local journalist who showed up and was doing their job, they published it in the local paper. But thank you for starting that way. I know that's not the most conventional way to start one of these, so I want to describe why right now in our country I wanted to start that way. 3 reasons. Number 1, if what we've lost over the last 40 years is an argument, it's the most important argument, is the old Reagan one, that government can do nothing good and only has to get out of the way while private companies and billionaires take care of everyone and everything. But there's a weakness to that argument. And you all have highlighted it. And the weakness is that argument relies on an Ohio that does not exist and never did. And there's a strength to our argument that we have not capitalized on politically. And that's that there is no community in Ohio where we need to go and invent a reality. We need to go and ask people about their lives. You know, where do their kids go to school? 9 times out of 10 in Ohio, it is a public school. When their aunt got pneumonia, was in the hospital for antibiotics, what kind of insurance was she on? Was it Medicare? Medicaid? VA benefits? Better than a 50-50 chance in Ohio, it's one of those 3. So we just need to ask people about their lives. And number 3, I'm not sure about you, but the last decade of Trump has been a lot like playing whack-a-mole. Right? You wake up and all of a sudden you've got to have an opinion on some issue you never dreamed needing an opinion on. Invading Greenland. And we've got to stop. Trump thrives at the whack-a-mole. We need the next year in Ohio to be about answering one question. What does it look like if for the first time in 20 years, the people of Ohio give Democrats power? And not what does it look like in Washington. What does it look like in our schools, our hospitals, our clinics, our roads? What does that look like? And I believe the whole election will hinge on do most Ohioans see themselves in the stories we tell about that future. So thank you for starting like that. My name's Bryan Hambley. I'm a leukemia doctor in Cincinnati, doing the most natural thing in the world, running for Secretary of State. Now, I understand it is not a conventional job for a leukemia doctor. So I want to take 6 or 7 minutes to describe why my wife Jan and I decided to do it. And then I'd love to get your questions or your comments. Now, Jan and I have had a conversation that I imagine many of you have had with loved ones. And it goes something like this. Now, what comes next in Ohio's democracy? Right? What comes next? After a decade of chaos, poor leadership, what comes next? What can all of us do to make it the best possible future? Now, what can we do to bring more communities in Ohio up? Let fewer people in Ohio down. Now, I'm reminded in my day job, everybody cares about the health of themselves and their communities. 2 years ago, I had a patient, young single mother in far southern Ohio, just outside of Portsmouth, went to her local hospital with a nosebleed. Only to be told she had leukemia. She had to come to Cincinnati, 2 hours, by ambulance, sirens blaring. When I walked into her room, this woman was scared. But she wasn't just scared of the leukemia. She was scared that her new high deductible health plan, this woman had insurance, but a $10,000 out-of-pocket max was going to leave her with co-pays too high to afford Christmas presents for her kids. She was afraid that her insurance company was going to deny the chemo she needed because she'd had many friends where insurance had played this deny game. And she was afraid that she'd spend the next 2 years of treatment driving back and forth to Cincinnati because all the local hospitals and clinics in her area had either been consolidated down or closed entirely. They could have provided at least some of the care she needed. People in this area know what consolidation and closures of clinics look like. Those were her fears. The day she was diagnosed with leukemia, and I thought to myself, this woman's not describing Democratic fears or Republican fears. She was describing human fears. When I think of what have our gerrymandered congresspeople in Ohio done to build a more secure future for that woman and the many people in Ohio like her, it's nothing. And it was worse than nothing last July when every Republican member of Congress from Ohio voted for a budget that is going to cut 500,000 Ohioans from their health care. And they structured it where it won't kick in until 2 months after this fall's election. Which leaves all of us the job of telling people the story of the crisis just around the corner. Now some of you might wonder, well, what in the world does that have to do with Secretary of State? And I will start by saying what the Secretary of State is supposed to do by the Ohio Constitution. There are 3 main jobs. Number 1, Secretary of State is supposed to draw fair districts when you go to vote for those congresspeople. Number 2, Secretary of State is supposed to write honest ballot language when you vote on a constitutional amendment. And number 3, Secretary of State is supposed to make it easy and fair for every Ohio citizen to vote. That's the job. Anybody sign the anti-gerrymandering petition in 2024? Oh, great, wow. Thank you for that. I don't have to tell everybody in this room that we have a Secretary of State in Ohio who for the last 7 years has doubled down on gerrymandering, disenfranchising millions of Ohioans. Democrats and Republicans alike are hurt by gerrymandering. We have a Secretary of State who now twice has used dishonest ballot language of all things, putting his thumb on the scale so that he could get his way, rather than just let Ohio voters get their way. And we have a Secretary of State who every chance he gets makes it a little harder for people to vote, especially people he doesn't think are likely to vote for him. That's what we've got. But if gathering together on a day where it's 4 degrees outside should be about anything, it's got to be about imagining a better Ohio. And let's imagine an Ohio where our districts are drawn, not by the politicians who sit in those seats, but by an independent redistricting commission. This is not pie in the sky. Conservative states like Idaho do it. More progressive states like Michigan do it. We should do it here in Ohio. And the way we should get there is if we win the Secretary of State race in 26, we'll control ballot language. We should put the exact League of Women Voters Amendment back on the ballot in 2027, an off year like repro. There is good polling with fair ballot language. We will win by 10 to 20 points. It would be a sea change for power in the state of Ohio. You should imagine in Ohio where when you go to vote on any constitutional amendment, you can understand in plain English what you are voting on. And we should imagine in Ohio where it is easy and fair for every Ohio citizen to vote. So when people ask me, why does a leukemia doctor want to be Secretary of State? I say, issue number one in Ohio is a broken and gerrymandered democracy. It cuts us off at the knees before we ever get started fixing our healthcare system. I believe government has to be where we do together what none of us can do alone. Build great schools, safe roads, and a healthcare system that I passionately believe ought to be universal, simple, and affordable. Now, many of you in this room know Democrats have been in a dry spell. I live in Warren County, a more Republican county. And some folks will ask, what makes me think that we could actually win a general election in the state of Ohio as a Democrat and put together a team that could win? I believe after traveling Ohio the last year that Democrats, independents, and yes, even a few Republicans are looking for three things. Number one, people want new voices in state government. We hear it everywhere we go. We're tired of doing the same thing. Number two, people want a crystal clear anti-gerrymandering message. And number three, any Democrat running in Ohio needs to know you're not taking over some power dynasty. This is a rebuilding job. We are in the political wilderness. We need to find a way out. I've been a part of rebuilding jobs. When I joined the University of Cincinnati as a leukemia doctor in 2020, we were the worst leukemia program in the nation for survival. And a corporate consultant from Chicago recommended shutting the program down. We knew some of our patients would be okay getting to Chicago and Columbus for care, but we'd be leaving a lot of people in southern Ohio behind. So we didn't shut it down. We got a team of nurses, nurse practitioners, social workers, dedicated to building a great leukemia program in Cincinnati. 6 years on, we have gone from the worst program in the nation to today in the top 10% of programs in the country for survival. And right before I announced this whole political run 13 months ago, a Cincinnati journalist gave me most of the credit for that turnaround, which was super good timing for the politics. But as any of you worked in healthcare or worked in teams know, no, it wasn't the whole story. No, it was the nurses who didn't leave in 2020 when it was no fun to work at our cancer center. It was no fun in 2020. The social workers who never let an insurance company deny care stand with a patient and the right chemo for their cancer. So when I think of that long shot in medicine at a public hospital in Cincinnati, and what lessons I can take into what is admittedly a long shot in politics, a Democrat winning statewide in Ohio, there are three key lessons. Number one, in any long shot, you need a team, not just a person. I don't think I have to tell anybody in Huron County, there is no single person coming to save the Ohio Democratic Party. Number two, in any uphill battle, you need a long-term vision and values for what you are fighting for. That's why I wanted us to start with what we're proud of. That's why I think we can't just be the party of not Trump. We have run that election. We lost it. We need to answer the question, what does it look like if we win? Third, there is no replacing work ethic. That's why this is our 245th event since announcing last January. That's why now we have been to 71 counties, and we'll report publicly next week we have raised more than $800,000, more than any down-ballot Democrat at this point in history. There is no replacing work ethic. My wife Jana and I grew up in small towns. I grew up on a small family farm. We have a 6 and an 8-year-old. We want them and every child in Ohio to have a democracy where they can use their moral imaginations to solve whatever the great problems of their time are. With that, I'm going to stop talking at you. Thank you for being here. I look forward to any questions you have. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Okay, so we have some questions from the audience. Of course, if you have more questions, please fill out your card and we'll have a volunteer come around and bring them up to me. So I actually prepared a few just in case we didn't have enough questions, but they're actually all the same questions. So everyone's on the same wavelength. Good job. So first and foremost, obviously you are running against Allison Rousseau, who has been in the State House since 2019. So we would love to know how your experiences, your skills, how you feel like what you could bring to the position, not necessarily, instead of her, but what are you going to bring, not having been yet in Ohio legislative policy?
Yeah, I think it's our biggest strength. I'll say 3 things. 1, the Republicans are going to nominate Robert Sprague. He's been the treasurer for 8 years. He was the legislator for 8 years before that. The Republicans are going to nominate a career politician. The question is, how are we going to draw a contrast with Robert Sprague? That's the race we have to win. 3 things that we need to contrast with Robert Sprague. Number 1, we need to put someone who is less partisan up against Robert Sprague, a career politician. Number 2, Robert Sprague takes all sorts of corporate PAC money. Democrats are tired of dark money in politics. We should only nominate someone who will never take corporate PAC money, and I have made that commitment. Number 3, we need to tell stories and listen to stories and engage with people on a human level throughout the state. I think we've shown we can do that over the last year. We're going to keep doing it the next 4 months of the primary. Those are the 3 things.
Great, thank you. So, in a situation where candidates like Sherry Brown, Amy Acton, and goodness knows some other candidates here in town or in the state win really close elections, and there's this pervasive idea now out there that election integrity is suspect, and we can't trust any elections, especially if they're close. How do you propose to improve the public perception of election integrity and to combat those claims of fraud?
It's an incredibly important point. I'll take 2 steps back from it. Our current Secretary of State is named Frank LaRose. Frank LaRose went on Fox News and cast aspersions at Board of Elections workers and cast doubt on the validity of our elections. Now, I'll let you in on a secret. Frank LaRose knows our elections are honest and that there are audits that show we're more than 99.99% accurate. So why did he do it? Frank LaRose did it because he thought if he brought in doubts about election integrity, it would help him with the far right wing of the Republican Party, and he needed them to run a Senate campaign. In essence, Frank LaRose is willing to do whatever it took with the Secretary of State's office to further his own political ambition to be a United States Senator. That is not what the Secretary of State's office should be. We need to tell the story of how audits happen, that we already have a paper trail. Robert Sprague, the Republican who's going to win the nomination, has said we should go to an all-paper system with hand counts. It would be less accurate, it would be impossibly long, and we already have a paper trail. Whenever you feed your ballot into the box, everybody knows when you feed your ballot into the box, those ballots go into the bottom. There is then an audit done after. We need to tell that story better, but we also need to recognize the reason that story hasn't been told is because Frank LaRose has been using it for his own personal political ambition.
Thank you.
So where are we saying on Fox News, he's wrong, what he just told you is an absolute lie? Where are we at?
Well, I promise if we get an invitation to be on Fox News, we'll do it.
He gets somebody.
Well, everybody, yeah,
Get
well.
somebody on it, because they buy this crap that he's feeding. And we just sit around and go on our computers and stuff. We need a voice
It's a huge point.
for the whole party.
Yep.
to that end, would you seek out, would you have your staff reach out to these media outlets that promote this sort of lie, this misinformation? Would you, as part of your candidacy, be doing that kind of outreach, or would that only be something once you receive the office? If you...
Oh no, we're already reaching out to conservative, independent, and liberal media. Let me say one point very strongly. Democrats have made a huge mistake not going on conservative media, not going on right-leaning media. The reason? In Ohio, most people get their news from right-leaning media. And so if we're willing to cede that entire discussion, we're going to lose. So we have to be willing to go to uncomfortable places. We've reached out. We've not gotten a lot of interest, but we're going to keep reaching out and trying. And even if it's an off-balance discussion, we will go on these podcasts or these media outlets to have the discussion and get in whatever word edgewise we could. Pete Buttigieg has exactly the right strategy.
Sir, did you want to ask a question?
Yes, sir. Robert?
I served on a school board for 15 years in New London, and I am very much against the state money going to parochial schools, anything but public education.
Yeah.
I'm sure probably everybody here got a public education.
I couldn't hear you, but tell me,
Excuse me?
it seems like a good idea, but I couldn't hear you.
I think that our public money should not go to any private schools,
Yes.
for the public schools.
They have parents, right?
Well, they
By
can.
choice.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the money we pay in for education.
Stop the school voucher program.
Yes, and I agree with that, yes.
But most kids in this community go to public schools, I imagine.
Most,
Yeah.
but there are some.
There's both. There's parochial school in the county. 1.5, because Celeryville Christian has K through 6 or 8, I'm not sure.
Yeah, we were, a few months back, I was in Hardin County, a rural agricultural county. Does not have a significant K through 12 private school at all. And in Hardin County, we asked the 15 people who showed up, what is a forgotten issue in Hardin County? And in Hardin County, 12 of the 15 people said either public schools or economic opportunities for young people, so they didn't have to leave town as soon as they graduated. When we were driving out of town in Hardin County, we drove by the public elementary school, and the sheet metal on the roof was literally blowing up in the wind. It's falling apart. Republican kids and Democratic kids in Hardin County lose when we shut money away from public schools.
And another thing, this is me, but when I was on the school board, I think it's wrong that public education has to bus people to Norwalk up for Catholic education. Why is that?
Yeah.
I mean, if you want your kid to go to a Catholic school, you take them. The other school districts shouldn't have to bus them.
Yeah.
So, along those lines, as Secretary of State, what could you possibly do in regards to this issue?
The upstream problem in Ohio's democracy is gerrymandering. So you got to wonder, why does the state representative and state senator in Hardin County throw their kids under the bus? They know most Republican kids go to public schools. It's because in a gerrymandered system, the power doesn't rest in the voters. The power rests with whoever is drawing that line. And in this case, it's Matt Huffman. There is one person in the Republican Party who controls the strings. And he has decided the marching orders for every Republican in the state. And any Republican who steps out of line to advocate for their communities is going to find themselves drawn out of their district. This is not hypothetical. A Dayton state senator stepped out of line to Huffman. He drew that Republican state senator's house out of his district. You can Google it. This is how they keep Republicans in line to throw their communities, their hospitals, and their local schools under the bus. That is why it's the upstream problem.
It happened here.
They did it
Our
here.
state representative lives less than a half a mile from where the previous state representative lives, and was not in our district. And then imagine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, along the lines of young people, Obviously, we all recognize that a major issue in politics today is getting younger people involved, although thank you for coming, young people, so lovely to see you. But we're asking all of our candidates, even if your position maybe isn't that connected to that kind of thing, what would you suggest for getting more young people, more unaffiliated voters, other voters that are disaffected, that are tired of the system, independent voters? How do we get them involved and participating in their democracy?
Yeah, I think the first thing is we've got to listen better. The second thing is we need a party that has more age diversity in the people that we elect. The first thing I'll say on number one is at a house party that had a fair number of young folks last spring, I asked a question of, what's the most important issue to you? And when we went around and it got to people who were between 25 and 40, almost every one of them said housing affordability. And so if you take a step back and look at what has happened to the age that somebody buys a house in the United States, over the last 15 years, the average age for your first starter home purchase has gone from about 30 to about 40. In a 15-year period of time, the ability to own the American dream and to have a house of your own has gotten further and further away. At the same time, as rents have gone up almost double the rate of inflation, and that was the money that people had planned in that 25 to 40 age group to save for their down payment. If we are not talking about issues that people care about, we will lose them. Democrats have been much too prone to come into discussions with their 18-point plans that were cooked up by a consultant and talk about House Bill 123, paragraph C, and not to talk in human terms about values and things that people actually care about. It is a deficit as a party. Republicans have been beating us like a drum on it.
And yet we still don't do it.
Oh, yeah.
So this is a question from the audience. Again, not sure how, as the Secretary of State, you would do this, but the question is, will you fight against data centers?
Yeah, the Secretary of State doesn't have a lot of power over local data center ordinances. I do want to say, one thing. In Brown County, there's a data center that's been proposed, and it would go along with a 15-year tax abatement, complete tax abatement for 15 years. This is not a unique strategy of companies. They're doing it with the Brown Stadium too, where they get these 15, 20, 25 years tax abatements, and you and I know what they're doing. The company has already planned how long they're going to be in that community, and it's about 14 and a half years. And they're going to pull out right before the tax abatement goes, or they're going to renegotiate and forever not pay taxes.
Right.
This is not a partisan issue. If we had a democracy that was working appropriately, we should be able to get Republicans and Democrats at the table, and companies that are benefiting from the services in that area should be paying their fair share of taxes. But in a system where the democracy has been so manipulated by a small number of people and by corporate interests through corporate PAC money, there's no discussion happening. But this should not be partisan.
How do we fix it?
Well, I think two things. One, we need to ban corporate PAC money in politics. And number two, we need to get rid of gerrymandering. I'm starting to sound like a broken record. I apologize for that.
No, trust me, this group is very anti-gerrymandering.
All right,
We
yeah,
have worked
that's right.
very hard against it for many years, and we were all devastated when it didn't pass. And kind of along those lines, my question to you, obviously a major part of Secretary of State, and what we've seen is this misinformation being allowed to be put on the ballot language, and now is there not a ballot board as well? So how, as Secretary of State, can you ensure that between you and the ballot board, that the language is not partisan, it's not misinformation, but is also not interpreted that way by other people?
That might be the most important question in Ohio's democracy right now. I'll take 2 steps back. The ballot board in Ohio that writes that ballot language is different than the redistricting commission that has a governor on it. The ballot board that writes that language is 5 members, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and the Secretary of State. That is why the Secretary of State always controls ballot language. That is why in Ohio, our Secretary of State has dramatically more power than in many other states. That is why the Secretary of State has been able, single-handedly in 2024, to keep gerrymandering in place and torpedo all of us who worked on the Independent Redistricting Commission. If we win in 26, we will control the ballot board, because we'll control the Secretary of State's office. We should use that immediately in 2027 to rerun an Independent Redistricting Commission. It's the most important job of the next Secretary of State.
So as we're wrapping up, I always want to give you an opportunity to tell everyone how they can support you, where they can find you, what they could do to help you out.
Well, oh boy, a softball question to end. Thanks for that. Yeah.
There might be more out here. I saw some hands. We're not done yet.
Well, I'll say that there's three things that are very helpful. One is we've got a table set up, and we've got QR codes for our social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. What we ask people to do is if they would follow us on one of those that they're most active on, and don't just like our content, but comment on it and share with your own thoughts. It makes it much more likely that when we post in Cincinnati, somebody in Huron County will see it. Number two, we love house parties. We have done about 200 of the 245 events as living room and backyard house parties. We'd love to be in your living room. And so on that front table, if you check a box that says host house party on the sign-in sheet, within 1 week, you get an email from the campaign manager, and we'll look at a date and a time to be back up in your neighborhood. Number three, early donations help any candidate. And so if you go to hambleyforohio.com, I'm sure you can figure it out.
Did we have any other questions from, oh yeah, okay, there we go.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
I've been involved with political campaigns in Ohio for a long time, going back to John Kerry and even before that. Worked in the Obama campaign, and it seemed like things really changed after the Tea Party took over the politics in 2010, and John Kasich became governor, and then pretty soon, you know, we're losing all of the state elections, and we lost the majority in the House and Senate, and on the Supreme Court, and it just seems to feel like the Ohio Democratic Party has not been effective. And it's because it's got a lot of older, entrenched people running it and trying to do the same things over and over again. You can't go to a neighborhood that has 100 homes and walk by 80 of them or 90 of them just because you're looking for somebody who already says they're going to vote Democrat, and you're going to dump more literature on their front porch that might already be laying there. I think we really need to take a look at the Ohio Democratic Party and its failures and figure out how we can make it more effective. Could you comment on that, please?
The frustrations that you just described are frustrations I felt as a volunteer for the Anti-Gerrymandering Initiative in 2024, and as part of what led me to run for this office. Everything you said is right. The coordinated campaign has been a disaster the past 2 cycles. If we don't fix it, we're not going to win. Yeah.
I'd like to just say that the organization Swing Left is doing a lot about this. So I would say go onto their website, take a look. We're starting to talk to people here about it. There's somebody who's from this group that is doing a phone bank with them to learn more about how that goes. Because they are a knock every door thing. Now, I'm not sure, honestly, if knock every door is going to work here, but knock a lot more doors. And they are developing things. So become aware of that. And I I think we'll be putting that into our soup mix as we go forward. Yeah, John Cage is completely correct.
And I might, well, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead and finish. I just.
No, I was gonna, yeah.
My question is, in your opinion, who is the most powerful Republican in the state of Ohio?
Matt Huffman. Thank you.
Are you going to Allen County over and over? We gotta get.
I've been to Lima 3 times. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you for your work. Thank you for not giving up in this area. I am optimistic, after traveling to 71 counties, that 2026 we could finally break through, but it's going to be really hard. It's going to be a really close election, and we have got to be doing all of our jobs. Our team will do our part. I'm so thankful to have met you. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Bryan. Appreciate that. Okay, folks, before we have our next candidate come up, just want to remind you to please go ahead and fill out the cards if you have questions. That just helps us keep things on track. Also, if you want to have any conversations or anything, there's a whole other room in the other side.